Apologies, I've been affected by technical gremlins today. Was unable to log in on my phone, and passwords were playing up, and then everything decided to freeze. But we are back in order, back in action, and ready for a jam-packed day. So for the record, good morning, everyone. My name is Kayla Murray, and I'm the Standing Committee Chair for Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism. And of course, today we're going to be dealing with the deliberations and negotiating mandate on the Upstream Petroleum Bill. This is having conducted numerous public engagements or hearings across the province. So with that, I would like to afford an opportunity to the members to just briefly introduce themselves. Members, if you'd like to introduce yourselves.
Good morning, Chair, and good morning to the members, and good morning to everyone on the platform. My name is Mbulelo Isaac Selegu, a member of the committee. Thank you very much, Chair.
Good morning, Chair. Khalil Branca is member of the committee. Good morning to all the members and the colleagues. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning, Chair. Andrikus van der Westhuizen. Happy to see you have joined, and I've also had to take some extra steps regarding this new authenticator. So I'm glad we're all sorted and able to attend this meeting.
Thank you very much. My term for it is technical gremlins. All right, so with that, I'd also just like to welcome the officials that have joined us from DMRE, and I'd like to afford them an opportunity to introduce themselves online.
A very good morning to you, Chairperson. Good morning, honorable members. From the DMRE, we are 4 officials. My name is Dr. Kensani Olgamasekwa. I'm the Chief Director responsible for mineral mining and mineral policy. I have with me Ms. Mamohale Stella, who is the Director, and I have Ms. Mukundindo, who is the Deputy Director, and Mr. Mahasha, who is our Assistant Director. From our side, that's all, Chair. Maybe the parliamentary liaison officer may join. If they're there, we'll introduce them. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Happy to introduce them when they connect. So with that, for the record, we have no apologies received for today, but we'll just quickly go over the rules of engagement. So of course, this being an online meeting, members are and guests are asked to kindly keep themselves muted and to turn off their video throughout the duration of the call unless called upon to speak. We will of course have question and answers opportunities and opportunities for engagement, at which point if you could please raise your hand to indicate that you are speaking or that you would like to speak, and you will be called upon. All right, so with that, we can now move on to the consideration of the department's responses to the written and oral submissions made by stakeholders. So with that, I'll hand over to the department to brief the committee.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity. Allow me to share the presentation, Chair.
No problem.
Is it visible?
Yes, perfect. Thanks.
A very good morning again. And we have, Chairperson, received the comments from different stakeholders in the province relating to the Upstream Petroleum Resource Development Bill 2021. And we, in the shortest space of time we had, Chair, there were a lot of comments. We tried our best to respond to the matrix that the Office of Parliament has sent to us. And we went on the matrix and tried and answered most of the questions or most of the comments that were raised. In some where we agree, we noted the comment, and in some where we needed to clarify what the issues were, we did clarify. And we therefore then went on and decided and thought maybe it would be best for us, whereas members have seen the matrix, to just combine a presentation wherein we can group some of the common issues that were raised together and summarize and the responses and rather than going through item by item and then we can afford the members a Q&A session at the end of our presentation. So this is how we thought it would be much more efficient, Chair, to handle the issues. So our responses in the presentation are clustered in terms of what we have received. There were comments on the preamble. There were comments on the definitions. There were comments on different provisions or clauses of the bill. And there were other comments that were meant, were general comments, which we also have clustered in the presentation as such. So with your permission, sir, we will start, the chair will start the presentation.
Yes, please proceed.
As on the preamble, there was a concern that was raised that a clause or a statement should be included in the preamble to state that the acceleration of petroleum exploration and production should be done in a sustainable manner, ensuring that the environment is preserved during and after the exploitation of these resources. So we are of the view that our preamble does speaks to sustainable development in terms of the words that the members require, the member or the public participant raised, because in the bill, the preamble says it provide for orderly development of petroleum resources and provide for equitable access to and sustainable development of the nation's petroleum resources. So we also that it says recognizing the petroleum resources are non-renewable natural resources and must contribute to South African social and economic development. We believe that in terms of what we covered there, and added that the custodian is the state who will make sure that those issues are covered. The preamble does cover that. And then that is the only issue that was raised on that section. And then in the definition section, there was a concern that it is not clear whether the definition of development is inclusive of upstream petroleum infrastructure. The relationship between these two terms must be clarified. So we responded and said, yeah, this bill also deals with infrastructure related to upstream, meaning that once the oil and gas are mined, they need to be stored somewhere in the infrastructure. And in the development of the upstream petroleum resources, there is no way where the development of the infrastructure will not be catered for. So parallel to us speaking to upstream, we also are dealing with the infrastructure associated with a upstream petroleum infrastructure. If you look at the bill, you will also realize that we have defined a petroleum infrastructure in the bill. So it is our view that those issues are related. And then in terms of the Black person, the comment says it is fantastic that South Africa's mineral resources are going to be shared by the citizens and not just by overseas companies. However, the concern is that the minister is given so much power in the bill in determining who gets to benefit for the 10% for economic empowerment. The definition of black needs to be clarified. Firstly, maybe to touch on the issue of the ministerial powers, is that the minister will not act, or whoever is the minister is not going to act only on their own discretion. They will have recommendations that comes from the Petroleum Agency of South Africa, and there will be a lot of rigorous process that happens in determining that 10% participation. And obviously, there will be regulations that regulates the minimum requirements. And the definition of Black persons for the purpose of the bill is clarified in Section 1BA, Roman figure 1 and 2 and it outlines the categories of persons who will participate as Black persons. These include Coloureds, Black Indians, and we believe that Aboriginals also will fall under Africans. So there was a concern also that was raised by those coming from the Aboriginals who believed that the definition of Black person doesn't cover them. And we are of the view that the word Africans under the definition does cover everyone. Clause 3, there was a concern that the role of the state as the custodian of petroleum and its responsibility in relation to development of is listed, but not the state's custodianship of responsibility towards the environment. A custodianship of petroleum may also mean that a limit of extraction of this is imposed as part of responsible custodianship by the state. The state is the custodian to give effect to Section 2 of the Constitution, and it ensures that the resources are developed in an orderly and ecological manner while promoting justifiable social and economic development. And we can further on add to say there are various sections that are there in the bill that covers issues of environment. And once the state is the custodian, they have to ensure that everything that is done in terms of the law, and environment is covered fully in this bill. Clause 5, the current clause phrasing of clause 5 in relation to the use of water, sinking a borehole, etc. should be considered. Mines operating without water license are a major challenge in the mining environmental sector. This phrasing could lead to misunderstandings and misinterpretation, risking oil and gas operators bypassing the required water environmental authorization required. So we are saying that clause 5 should be read together with clause 44. Yes, it might be further in the bill, which requires that applications, specifically clause 44.1, applications or applicants must provide proof in their application for water use license in terms of the National Water Act before granting of the petroleum right. So the water issues are addressed, and the department in their one environmental system, as we know, they also include Department of Water Affairs. So there was no one who's going to be granted a right without a water use license that outlines how water should be treated and how the issues of water and sinking of boreholes should be done. Although we are not the custodian, that is why in our act to refer to the National Water Act. There was also a concern raised under clause 5.3d. The clause makes reference to National Water Act and only provides for sources of abstraction of water for petroleum development, but does not provide for the treatment of disposal of wastewater from the process. So we are saying that the right holders will be expected to comply with the National Water Act and requirements for water treatment thereof. It is our considered view that in this bill, it will not be necessary for us to outline how the water treatment and disposal of wastewater will be handled, because there in the National Water Act, how that is done is clear. Otherwise, we might miss some issues that the Water Act might need and mislead the right holders or the applicants. Clause 6. It says there was no mention is made of environmental authorization or water use licenses. So we're saying that clause 6 should be read together with 83.1 and 2, and also that compliance with NEMA is a requirement in terms of clause 83.1 and 2 in the UPRD bill, and the environmental authorization is issued by the Minister of DEF is a condition prior to issuing of a permit, and also including reconnaissance or granting of the rights in terms of the petroleum resources. In clause 10, I think this clause 10, I think I have outlined it. It's mostly related to the 10% and how the definition of the Black person needs to be clarified, and the participant there was mostly concerned around the minister's powers, which I think I've outlined in the previous slide. Clause 10D, it is recommended that Clause 10D be amended to include a reference to ecological sustainable. It is recommended that is amended to include the dual responsibility of sustainability and development. The clause should read, ensure optimal levels of recovery of petroleum resource in an ecological sustainable manner while promoting justifiable social economic development. And we are saying that the objects of the bill, so it will be not practical for us in every way where we speak about environment and sustainability in every clause to include it, because the objects of the bill are to advance in clause 2, Roman figure 1, economic development, and to give effect to Section 24 of the Constitution, which warrants us to ensure that petroleum resources are developed in an orderly and ecological manner while promoting justifiable social and economic development. So that is an umbrella statement that really covers us in terms of whether whatever during exploitation, there is no negative impact that are brought about by the right holders from the environment, and there is neglect in terms of ecological sustainability and social and economic development. So we are of the view that that matter is fully covered. Clause 10E, the bill must provide that the Petroleum Agency must verify measurements of petroleum products to allow for assessment of royalties and revenues of the state. Yes, we are saying we agree that when you look at clause 90 of the bill, it confirms that PASA monitors the volumes that are produced and they are verified in that section, in line with that section. And in terms of measurements and of petroleum products, this will be contained in the production work program of the applicant. So in the production work program, which is similar to in the mining industry, wherein you require a work program. So they will talk to what are the expected volumes, and once they start production, PASA needs to go and monitor those if they are done in line with their commitments that they would have made in their work program. Clause 10F, the Petroleum Agency must receive and evaluate applications and make recommendations to the minister with regard to issuing of permits or rejections of applications. What are the criteria on which these decisions will be based? If not contained in the bill, such criteria must be included in subordinate legislation. So Section 17 of the bill does clarify for the requirements which must be complied with, and added to that, we are agreeing that subordinate legislation in terms of regulations will be developed, but that section does clarify at which point may minister reject or applications. Clause 10, noting that minister is allowed to make regulations in terms of Section 107 of this bill. Clause 10N states that a function of the Petroleum Agency is to perform any other function in respect of petroleum resources, which the minister may determine from time to time. And the question there is that in what manner will such a determination be made? So maybe unless we understood it wrong, we are of the view that the minister make the determination in line with the country's plans in respect of oil and gas to ensure security of supply, a similar situation that is being done in the energy space in electricity, where there is a determination. So even for oil and gas, there will be a master plan that will be developed that talks to the country's plans on how oil and gas need to be exploited, and that is to circumvent the security of supply in the country. So minister will not just unanimously make a determination. There will be consultation, and such a process even goes further to go to cabinet, wherein the master plans are approved by cabinet. Clause 11(1)(c) and D indicate that fees payable in terms of this act, as well as the sale of geotechnical data, has been identified as a source of income. Will these fees be ring-fenced for the specific function of the agency, and has the overall costing of operating of the agency been determined? So maybe just, I think, to bring context is that PASA is already existing. And as we had said that oil and gas is currently regulated through Chapter 6 of the MPRD, which we are trying to separate here. So the PASA is already having an operational budget, and they use the fees definitely for their operation. And the budget that they will have done, or the operating costs, follow a process that is regulated in terms of the PFMA, and the Minister of Finance and like any other entity, a state-owned entity, that will be formally introduced by the minister and approved. The budget will even be tabled in Parliament. So it is a rigorous process wherein the operating costs are really properly managed in terms of the PFMA. So there is not necessarily ring fencing, but the budget will specify what the costs are. Clause 17, it says it is recommended that the clause be amended to include a new clause as follows: 2E, the applicant has proven adequate financial resources and the technical ability to conduct required habilitation closure, decommissioning and management of latent and residual impact of exploration or production operations. So there are two issues here relating to adequate financial and technical ability. So clause 17, firstly, it provides for financial and technical fund, technical for exploration and production operations. So in order for an applicant for their right to be granted, they must prove to PASA that they can financially and technically have the capability to do exploration and production operations. Obviously, that will be in their program. Then the other financial requirement is in line with NEMA, wherein the applicant, in line with 24P of NEMA, must make provision for a financial provision for environmental authorization relating to mining, prospecting and exploration and production or related activities, so that they can then have a provision for rehabilitation, management and closure of environmental impacts before the minister responsible for mineral resource issues and environmental authorization. So that's they are two separate issues. So we are not agreeing necessarily that the clause 17 must be amended, because the environmental issues are covered in NEMA, and our bill covers mostly the financial and technical fund or financial resources that are to make sure that they are enough to conduct exploration and production activities. Clause 19 and 20. The clause refers to affected party in 20, whereas the clause in 19 refers to interested and affected parties.
They said use the
Apologies, we're just going to quickly mute one of the participants.
My parents at their honeymoon.
Thank you. Please proceed.
It is not clear what the intended difference is and why there is need to differentiate. Why are the criteria to differentiate between interested and affected parties? It is strongly recommended that the bill in all instances refer to interested and affected parties. It is recommended that clause 20 be amended to provide for interested and affected parties to receive information on the outcome of the consultation process. So maybe just to make a comment first to say, the two consultation process in clause 19 and 20, these are two different consultation. In clause 19, Chair, we also have learned that consultation is becoming a big animal in our space. So that is why we separated the consultation, as unlike in the MPRDA. So the applicant would have send all their documentation and the application to PASA in clause 19. And within 14 days of receipt of the applicant, when they've accepted it, PASA will do their own assessment. They'll look at all the requirements for compliance in terms of that application. And once they have done that, they will then invite interested and affected parties broadly and to make comments on the application. And then in clause 20, we further said, once PASA has finished and they've received a report on the interested and affected parties, the applicant will then in clause 20 conduct consultations in terms of the application in the vicinity of where the exploitation or the license is going to be granted in the area, so that the people that are there or the affected parties who are there can make comments. So it is twofold. That is why there's a separation. In clause 20, we are only talking to interested and affected parties, and in affected parties, and then in clause 19, we speak to interested and affected parties. So that's why there's that little separation, but the consultations are very clear, and we are of the view that the applicant will not only know all the interested parties. Whilst PASA had done that consultation, this one becomes specifically, they will go there, put a notice in the area where the people are, and they will then invite them if they have got comments, and those affected, including landowners and lawful occupiers, they will make comments on the application. So that's why there is that separation. And furthermore, there is also another comment in terms of clause 20, that clause 20 requires that the applicant be informed of the requirement to consult in the prescribed manner with the owner, lawful occupier, and affected party, submit the consultation report to the agency within 60 days, and where applicable, apply for an environmental authorization in terms of NEMA. The above will result in a situation where consultation will be done in terms of this clause, as well as in terms of environmental pact process, which is required to obtain an environmental authorization. It is recommended that the provision be amended to enable consultation in terms of the area process. So we are almost separating the two consultation. The consultation for NEMA will happen within the ambit of NEMA and the prescribed time frames that they would have prescribed. But in this one, in section 20, the prescribed time frames also is to allow for the applicant to follow through and make sure that there is agreement with the affected landowners and lawful occupiers. And the two consultation in terms of issues of environment and issues that are dealt with section 19 and 20 in terms of the whole application are two different issues. And we also didn't want to trump the requirements for NEMA. And that's, you will realize that we only refer to authorization in terms of the National Environmental Management Act. So these are two different issues. There is a comment also on clause 29. Clause 29 deals with transfer. Then it says it is recommended that the bill include a condition that transfer must meet the requirements of environmental authorization that was issued. The transfer must not impact on the duty of carrying out and complying with the obligations and the terms and conditions of environmental authorization and water use license that were issued. So this is where now there is transfer of hands in terms of commercial or in terms of the license, if it's being transferred or granted to someone else rather than maybe the right holder. So we are of the view that in terms of the transfer, there will be undertakings that will happen and resolutions will be made with regards to compliance and the liability thereof. So there is no loophole, that will have a negative impact in compliance with the obligations of the conditions of the environmental authorization. There isn't, because this is a thorough process that we follow. Like, for example, when we also currently deal with it in Section 11 of the MPRDA. So the transfer is very rigorous, and the conditions thereof cannot just be violated by the next party. Clause 30 says the partitioning of rights may also trigger the requirement for an amendment of environmental authorization. The alignment of the bill and the environmental legislation must be considered. So definitely, the transfer will have undertaking. If there is an amendment that is required for the AEA, that will be done. And because we do believe that at that point when the partitioning is happening, it's either there may be changes or there may be things that needs to be amended in terms of the environmental authorization. And the minister has the authority also to be advised by PASA, and they can add a condition or they can amend the environmental authorization conditions when it's needed. So there is not going to be a step where these issues are not taken care of. Then we move to clause 31. The clause 31 is the one that allows participation by 10% for Black persons. So the concern is that in terms of 10% Black ownership and participation in the bill, we need clarity. Black should include African, Indian, colored as well, and it should be inclusive. So we have, I think, addressed that by saying that the definition of Black has been outlined in clause 1B and AB, and A Roman figure 1 and 2 outlines the categories of those who are considered as Black. And then in clause 31, 1 of the bill states the following: every petroleum right must have a minimum of 10% undivided participating interest of Black persons. And then the further issue is that this one limits the number of parties that can qualify for petroleum right. So our view is that the clause does not limit the number of parties that can qualify to participate in the right. The 10% is just a minimum. So there is no limitation, a minimum. So Chair, we said a minimum because we considered that 10% will be a reasonable start or an entrance for Black participants to enter into the sector, other than if we had made it a very huge amount or a very high percentage where, because of the capital injection, there might be issues. So it does not limit. It is just giving a minimum. And then where the participants have got more or do have a capital injection that is more than 10%, they can do so. The other issue is that I think that this one should have gone to general comments. The issue of SIAS, that in 2015, there is a requirement that every bill has got a socioeconomic impact assessment study. So there is no bill that can be accepted by Parliament without SIAS, because it is a requirement. So when we are at this stage, Chair, already we had done SIAS, and I think we had submitted it in the earlier days for those that needed it. And in clause 31.6, there's an issue that provides that the Petroleum Agency may grant such an extension for a period not exceeding 2 years. It is proposed that in order to provide for the necessary flexibility when required, this law be amended to provide that the time period for compliance be determined by the agreement between the applicant and the Petroleum Agency. Clause 34, that's where we are saying that if the applicant does not meet the minimum requirement of the 10% participation by Black person, we will give them an extension of 2 years to go and look for the BE partners. And the concern here is that that should not be prescribed in the bill, but be at the discretion of the applicant and negotiation between the applicant and PASA. And we know that issues like this, if they are left unattended, there may be issues. We are of the view that there cannot be any differentiated timeframes for applications, and the extension that is there, it's better if there is a clause that talks to for how long that extension could be granted. Otherwise, there is going to be it's very going to be complicated, because the parties will go there and just state and maybe not even be truthful in terms of the extension that they require. So we believe that the extension must be prescribed. Clause 34.2 indicates that the state has a right to 20% carried interest in petroleum rights, including in both an exploration and production. This requirement may be a concern for investors. Consideration should be given to revising the wording to include up to 20%, which will provide some flexibility, and should the 20% level not be economically viable for the development. The state's 20% participation is the minimum to ensure meaningful participation by the state. So, Chair, in this instance, I do believe that South Africa is at a stage that we are, yes, considering that investment is required, but government must also be deliberate in making transformation legislation that are meant to transform the country. And it is important that we become deliberate in terms of the 20% participation. I mean, this is not only practiced in South Africa. Our counterparts in Namibia, our neighbors, they do this in terms of how the state can participate in petroleum rights for the benefits of its citizens. So it is for the first time we are going to practice this. I believe we should give it a time, or we should test it and see if investors are going to run away. But we are of the view that this will really benefit our economy. It will benefit our government, and the department also published a bill in 2023 that is meant to create the National Petroleum Company, which the state will utilize to participate in petroleum right. Clause 39, there is a comment to say environmental, social, and public health considerations are not listed. This is a very narrow range of considerations listed again, as with each of the license types and phases. So in terms of clause 39, the applicant must have the ability to comply with the relevant provisions of the applicable legislation regulating the upstream petroleum health and safety and environmental authorization. And in terms of clause 2G, one of the objects of this bill is to advance social and economic welfare of South Africans. So there is no limitations in terms of compliance with health considerations. So the department will further on go and develop regulations related to health and safety issues impacting in the petroleum sector. Clause 44 states that the minister must grant a petroleum right if A, the applicant has proven access to financial resources and has the technical ability to conduct operation optimally in accordance with the exploration work commitment for the initial term. It is not clear what the meaning of prescribed terms and conditions, that is 44.4, and if the intention is to address this in the regulations. So in terms of the financial issues and the technical ability, I think we have explained that the financial guarantees are different in terms of NEMA and in terms of this bill. And then when we use the term prescribed in the bill, we're referring that the issues will be prescribed and determined by the regulation. You'll see there are clauses where we say as prescribed. That's what it means. Clause 46, the need for the amendment to also the submission of a new application on environmental right, along with a public consultation round, cannot be stressed enough. The scale, nature, and technology, as well as the impact of operations, may change, leading to different environmental impacts. So it is about the progression. So this clause says clearly indicate that the holder of a petroleum right may not progress to the next term of exploration without approval of the petroleum agency. So in any event, whenever there is movement, remember there are different phases in terms of licensing of petroleum rights, petroleum resources. It starts at a reconnaissance permit, it goes to exploration, then it goes to production. So at any of those stages or any of those phases, before they progress also to the next term, because exploration runs for a period of 9 years, they will move from 2 years, 3 years, and so forth, and in production. That will always be approved by PASA. There is no progression to the next phase without compliance being checked. Clause 47 and 48. This requirement should include that the holder complied with previous requirements as part of environmental, water, and waste management conditions and authorization. It will be beneficial to take into account the extent of social environmental track record and compliance of the applicant when considering the issuing of permits and authorization. This should include information of operations. Furthermore, compliance during its exploration or production phase should be taken into account when considering the granting of a production right. This will assist government in making informed decisions without granting or refusing a grant, a right, or determining appropriate conditions to be attached to authorization. So I think the issue of track record, wherein they're saying that it could be beneficial that the social and environmental track record and compliance should be considered when issuing permits and authorization. We are fully in support, because PASA does that in any way. They do annual assessments. There is annual reports that the applicants need to submit to PASA, and all these authorizations that they have will be assessed. If there's anything that needs to change, that will be changed in consultation with PASA. So we believe that these issues are fully covered under the functions of PASA. Clause 49 does not provide clarity on the removal, use, and disposal of petroleum resources during exploration and appraisal phases. We have noted the comment, and that the department will develop regulations to ensure that inappropriate use and its associated impact are managed during exploration and appraisal operations in line with Section 107. So the minimum provision is there of how we can remove and dispose, but the detail will be outlined in the regulation. Clause 50, this clause should include the provision that drilling, additives, chemical analysis of waste materials, volumes, environmental measurements, etc. are published regularly on a publicly accessible platform in line with administration justice, that is PAIA, which makes provision for information to be made available insofar as it relates to environmental risk. It is critical that information around drilling and well stimulation chemicals, additives, and emissions is disclosed to regulators and decision makers and is accessible to the public. The right holder will manage the activities listed in their work commitment during exploration operations, and the work commitment, which must be approved by PASA. And furthermore, during production operation, the right holder will manage the activities through approved work program. So the details relating to the management of the listed activities will be prescribed in the regulations, meaning the chemical analysis of waste, the volumes, and environmental measurements. Chair, such details are important not to be in the bill in the case there is emergent issues that come out for changes to be made. It will be easy for us to change the regulations rather than going to change the act once the bill becomes an act. And also that if people want information, I mean, PAIA allows people to get that information from the regulator, and they can do that and ask the information that they want in terms of the right holder. So that is allowed in terms of PAIA. And in the department, we practice that whenever there are participants or people who want information. We don't go and make it public, but they are allowed to come and apply for it in terms of buyer. Clause 51 is furthermore adding to the previous section to say record keeping of all additives, volumes of waste, fluids, emissions, and the chemical analysis of this, among other factors, should be ensured and should form part of the conditions of any form of exploration. The first thing is that drilling may not be undertaken without a permit, and the drilling permit should be applied from PASA, and that in terms of record keeping, that record, if there is a need that any party needs that record, PASA would have that record. Obviously, there is records that is confidential, that is classified, and there's a record that it can be accessible. So the record keeping, I think it's a matter that is covered fully. It is recommended in clause 52 that it be amended to state that obtaining an environmental authorization is required prior to issuing of a drilling permit. We are saying that there is no permit that will be issued without any environmental authorization. So any form of license, whether it's a permit or it's a right or anything that the applicant would have applied within PASA, they will have to have an environmental authorization. Clause 53, the progression from exploration to should not be allowed without the required environmental authorization and public consultation. At this stage of the progression, public consultation would have taken place. And if PASA sees that there is a requirement, there is a need, sorry, I think I moved, there's a need for consultation, that will be done. And then clause 53(2)(b) provides for amendments or new applications for environmental authorization in terms of NEMA. So in the event that there is movement between progressing from exploration to production and environmental authorization needs to be amended, PASA will determine that, and that will be done in terms of NEMA. Clause 54 says the definition of appraisal and relevant provision does not clarify whether or how the petroleum resources produced in the process leading to and during appraisal process should be managed, disposed, or whether it can be used for commercial gain. Also, the clarity must be provided on the management and disposal of petroleum that is extracted during the exploration phase by applications, especially considering that rights related to exploration phase can be as long as 9 years. Yes, the comment is noted, and we do believe that it's important for us to have a mechanism on how the petroleum resources that would have been collected or mined during exploration will be used, and in the regulations will outline. The department will develop regulations that on how that can be managed. We are agreeing that we need to clarify that, and we can do that through the regulation on how those volumes will be managed during exploration. And we are agreeing that exploration can be a longer period of 9 years, and it remains a question on whether those volumes can be used for commercial gain or not. Clause 59, this clause deals with the approval of a production right. It is recommended that the clause 59(1)(c) be amended to also make reference to adequacy of financial and technical resources related to rehabilitation, closure, decommissioning, and management of latent impacts as referred to financial provision regulations 2015 as environmental impacts which may become known in the future. NEMA into section 24P provides for an applicant for environmental authorization relating to prospecting, mining, exploration, production, or related activities. And it also requires that they provide a financial guarantee for that. And the issue raised here in terms of the latent impacts, the work program would have outlined that, and in terms of NEMA, that we believe will be covered in terms of Section 24P. Clause 65, it is recommended that this clause at least include the requirement that such operations must be conducted consistent with the objections set out in Clause 2. And the recommendation is that Clause 65 1A be amended to refer to ecologically sustainable long-term recovery of petroleum resources. And we have the view that this issue is fully covered, specifically when we look at the objects. And our assessment is that if we are to, in most of the sections, speaks to ecological sustainable long-term recovery or include the word sustainability, we have fully covered that already. And there is no need for us to specify it in each clause. And also the NEMA requires that resources are exploited in an ecological manner. Clause 76, it must be noted that for any extension period of the right as provided for 76.3, an environmental authorization is also relevant consideration. The environmental authorization period and possible extension therefore is not considered. Any extension of a right as completed in this section must include, must also align with environmental authorization processes NEMA. The extension will also only be granted in terms of if the terms and conditions are determined and agreed upon by the minister. So extensions are also treated as applications, and there is a need to look at all the compliance requirements, including environmental authorization during extensions. So there is not going to be any oversight of environmental issues during extensions. Clause 78 and 80, these clauses do not clarify how transparency and access of information will be dealt with when associated with significant environmental implications. The clause should provide clarity that information cannot be withheld in instances where such an information is instrumental in the assessment or clarification of environmental impacts. In line with Clause 82, PASA may disclose information for the advancement of this bill and give effect to Section 24 of the Constitution. And we are of the view that members of the public can apply through PAEA to access any information relating to any information that they may need in petroleum, in the petroleum space, or in any rights or in any event, whatever they need, PASA will provide that. Obviously within the terms and conditions of the right or permit or any other right that is there. Clause 83, it is not clear which has been added to the latest version of the bill was included to cater, for instance, where the bill refers to permits and rights without clearly stating the need for an environmental authorization. It is therefore recommended that Clause 83 be amended to also apply to extension of exploration operations, partitioning, and exemption. The addition of Clause 83 is to cater for transitional arrangements and for permits and petroleum rights and extensions of partitioning issued in terms of the MPRDA to ensure security of tenure. So the transitional arrangements that are in the bill at the end, they do are catering for issues that if they are pending applications, also if there is requirements for environmental authorization, these issues will be addressed during the transition from the compliance requirements within MPRDA and when the UPRD bill becomes an act. Clause 84.8, consideration be given to amending to state that a fixed percentage of financial provision, like for example, 20%, provision must be retained for latent and residual safety environmental, which, yeah, so I mean, in terms of NEMA, that financial guarantee will be calculated And there is a mechanism which is outlined in section 24P, and that will also cater for their percentage or the amount that is needed. And we don't believe that fixing that percentage will assist, because the environmental liability will never be known up until an assessment is done, and that will be aligned to the amount of funds that will be required to handle that environmental liability on the impact. Clause 88, clarity must be provided. It must be ensured that the cancelling or suspension of a permit does not influence the availability of financial provisioning as provided for NEMA for rehabilitation. Yeah, so yeah, that is clear. The minister will only cancel or suspend a permit without impacting the financial guarantee. So all these issues within the cancellation or the suspension, they will be done in line with the financial guarantee, and consideration will be made to ensure that that is not impacted, because at the end, the rehabilitation or decommissioning closure should take place in the event that that permit is cancelled or suspended. Clause 89, this clause deals with the restriction or prohibition of exploration and production on certain land or block. The clause refers to land, and based on its definition, it excludes the subsurface below land. Clarity must be provided if the intention is that the subsurface environment below the land should be included as part of the restriction. So our view is that the intention of the definition is meant to also describe resources beneath the earth surface in terms of how we defined land in this bill. Clause 92, I think 92 deals with penalty. And the concern is that as such, it is likely that this clause, which is 92, infringes 25(1) of the Constitution insofar as it does not provide sufficient reason for the deprivation of property envisaged in this clause. Oh, so clause 92 is the one that deal with expropriation. Sorry, I think 102 is the one that deals with penalties. So in terms of clause 92, where expropriation is supposed to happen, if there is a need, the minister will do that in line with the Constitution, and also consider the Expropriation Act. We know that we are not the custodian of expropriation, and thus we only refer to the Expropriation Act than doing it without considering those relevant legislation. So that is catered for. It will not infringe section 25(1). Clause 102, this clause provides for a fine not exceeding 10% of a right holder's annual turnover. However, it is suggested that in case of a pollution-related offense, the cost of remediating the pollution incident must also be required. So the penalty is in line, is in relation to infringement of this bill, and the infringement of environmental liability is provided for under NEMA. So we are of the view that whatever we have placed now as in clause 102 is sufficient to deal with infringements in line with this bill. We move further on. There were other general comments that were raised that we felt we could not just ignore them, and some were just comments that we have just noted. And the first concern was that it's relating to the international agency advises that in order to achieve net zero by 2050, as we know, South Africa is party to that, there must be no new investment in fossil fuel. The IEA further confirms that there is no need for new oil and gas projects. The net zero by 2050, a roadmap for global energy sector, reports confirm that the path to net zero requires immediate and massive deployment of all available clean and efficient energy technologies. It is in this context that we are highly concerned that the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee of Mineral Resources and Energy did not address our concerns as outlined above. As it stands, we are left with a bill that ignores the climate crisis. And furthermore is that the bill make no mention of the role that piece of legislation will have in forming and contributing to IEP around energy. Allow the integrated plan of 2016 is currently outdated. Although the IEP is currently outdated, the plan, which focuses on electricity, has included South Africa's commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in its planning. It is assumed that any future IEP will follow a similar trend. And so, yes, we do agree that the International Energy Agency net zero by 2050 is clear that each country will need to design its own strategy, taking into account its specific circumstances. So we are not of the view that we should stop any development. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to clean energy transitions, and plans need to reflect countries' different stages of economic development. And gas being seen as a fossil fuel, it is a transition fuel in the context of challenges being faced by South Africa. So our view is that though IAE has got requirements that we also subscribed to, we also need to consider our economic development in the country when we come with new developments in the oil and gas sector. I think in terms of the appraisal and relevant clause 54, we have dealt with in the initial slides, wherein we needed to clarify during appraisal how we will dispose the volumes of the collected, whether it will be used for commercial gain. That matter we dealt with earlier. There's further comments on climate crisis, that the bill is ignoring the climate crisis and is therefore misaligned with South Africa's climate change commitments. We are saying the bill does not ignore climate crisis. South Africa has commitments under Paris Agreement, and however, as a country, we still see the development of oil and gas sector as a game changer to the energy crisis that we are faced with. And as we know that South Africa will transition, but there are challenges that we need to address. The period provided for commencing on the UPRD bill was too short to ensure meaningful public participation, especially by a rural and historically disadvantaged community. So this is around the issue of public participation. And the concern is that those in the remote areas do not have readily access to electronic media. We published the bill for 30 days for written comments. We did one-on-one consultations with stakeholders to clarify issues. We further on through PPC obviously held public hearings, and we do note the concern around the remote areas. But I think in terms of the different provinces and the mode within which the public consultation were handled, the department did its best. There is room for improvement. We have noted the comment. The UPRD bill expands the functions and powers of the PASA, resulting in PASA performing the roles of both players and referee. The powers and functions of PASA have been expanded to cater for additional functions in line with the bill. The department has exercised caution to ensure that PASA does not perform its functions as a player and referee. And you can see that in most instances, PASA makes recommendations to the minister in terms of what is allowable within their mandate. So there is no a gray area whether they will be performing their duties as a referee and a player. The next one says the provisions made for consultation are wholly inadequate. I think this is the issue that relates to the consultation that we did. And furthermore, we are saying that consultation of clause 19 and 20 in this bill, we believe will cater for the learnings that we have had on consultation matters within the department with our clients. That is why you see that at this point, we have outlined consultation to be two-faced. Another concern, I think there's a person who says, I've worked at sea for 36 years. I have nothing now. When Petro SA came here and started operating using the sea, we did not get a cent from them. The money landed in the wrong hands. They did not consider the fishermen of Mossel Bay. With this legislation, they need to consider and consult the fishermen. And we are saying that we were part of the consultations that happened in George and Knysna, where communities from Mossel Bay were invited to participate. So they have been considered. There might be instances where maybe people have not seen the notices. It's possible, but the consultations did take place. The next one says, in terms of operation side of the legislation, we know it will be a secondary issue. Yes, especially in the rural areas where people should benefit from this bill. However, the issue of women is important. We are sitting with problems in South Africa when it comes to local economic development, especially for people outside the metro. We ask the government to look into rural areas in respect of the benefits. So the bill recognizes the need to promote local employment, skills development, technology transfer, supply of goods and services where exploration and production will be taking place. And the bill also recognizes that the state is the custodian of all mineral resources, and the state must promote equitable access to the nation's petroleum resources to all citizens. So we have tried our best, Chair, to cover the base to ensure that there's equal access, including women who will want to participate in different angles. I mean, those companies that may come, we are of the view that they must have plans of skills development. They must also train our people in technology transfer, considering that the sector is a very technical one. So wherever exploration and production is taking place, those issues must be taken care of by the right holders. In the current version of the bill, that's 13B 2021, the prohibition related to obtaining environmental authorization is removed. Why has this provision been removed? It is recommended that, consistent with one environmental system, the environmental authorization be retained in addition, and also consistent with OES. This include should also refer to the requirement to obtain water use license. After consultation, so during the B13B 2021 is the one that was printed after parliamentary consultation with the portfolio committee. That's the bill they are referring to there. So during the sessions, one of the key consideration that was made by the PPC is for the Department of DEF and DMRE to meet and deliberate on issues of environmental issues. And a consensus was reached that we needed to make sure that environmental authorization issues are there in NEMA and be moved to NEMA rather than them being prescribed in this bill, to avoid confusion, because the department is not the competent authority when it comes to environmental issues. So that is why that was taken out. The other concern is that, consistent with the agreement on the implementation of the one environmental system, the lack of alignment and integration between relevant regulatory processes between the bills, NEMA and National Water Act must be resolved prior to finalization of the bill. It is recommended that the reference to specific timeframes related to regulatory process in the bill be removed and be replaced with the phrase as prescribed. Yeah, so we have engaged, and the issues relating to environmental authorization or issues under NEMA will be dealt with in line with those acts. The last concern is around SIAS, I think, which we have touched on, that they needed to see the SIAS, and we are saying that SIA becomes a requirement and no bill will be accepted by Parliament without a SIAS. So, Chair, that is the end of our presentation, and we have tried in the event, maybe there are issues that we have missed. I think that can be raised within this platform we would like to thank you, Chair, for affording us this opportunity to provide clarity on those issues that we have provided clarity on. And we also apologize. I think the last section of our matrix, there are a few pages wherein the clause were not really highlighted clearly in the column that they were supposed to be highlighted, but they were included in the comments. It was just an oversight from our part, but we tried to address each item that was raised in the matrix by the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I understand that you were and your team were under a lot of pressure to get us this feedback as soon as possible. And I think one thing that we must note in our negotiating mandate as well is that the turnaround time for this legislation was quite short, which put a lot of pressure on every single part of the value chain when it comes to developing legislation. So we do appreciate, despite the timeframes and the immense pressure that you were under, that you were able to provide the feedback. So with that, I just want to give members an opportunity to ask any questions to the department. Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Members? Okay, I see Member Seleku has a question.
No, thank you, Chair, and also thank you for the presentation. Chair, I just want the department to give me more info in terms of how they came about the determination of percentages that is in the bill. And one would know that they are talking about 20% of state involvement, and they are talking about 10%. Can they just give more information in terms of how did they come to that determination? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. I would also just like to add one question and also a remark. So with regards to the SAES report, the only report that we received was a draft report dated December 2019, if I'm not mistaken. In subsequent correspondence, there was mention of a final report. However, that was not attached. And so right now, a concern for me procedurally is that there is a draft report that was created, but not necessarily a final report. And also what happened to that draft report thereafter. Was it eventually tabled at Cabinet? Was it tabled alongside the legislation? Was it actually circulated to members of the public? What was the process that draft legislation followed? Because from what I can see, it hasn't followed the necessary steps, and that is also what contributed to a lot of the questions around the SAES. SAES is so important because it also gives us an indication of the costs to the department, the costs to the economy, to persons, how much capacity is needed in order to implement the bill, and it also guides the president after its implementation on the next steps for the bill. So if we can just get clarity on whether that there is a final of that draft and what actually happened with that final draft. Because right now we're sitting with a document in draft version and yeah, raises more questions than provides answers. So with that, we'll hand over to the department. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for those comments. The first one relating to the determination of the 10% participation in the 20%. So a lot, there was research that was done, or benchmarking studies that were done to check how other similar jurisdictions are doing it. And in the context of South Africa, there was information that relates to specifically for the 10% first, how feasible can the percentage allow meaningful participation by Black persons because of the nature of the capital injections that is required. We're talking about billions of rands, and 10% of billions of rands for us was more reasonable than maybe giving a higher percentage that will not even allow participants to participate in the sector, including also 20%. We also thought it was reasonable not to kill investment, because if we had put it higher, it would have meant that the right holder, because the state is carried in the beginning, and when there is profit that is made, they then can pay their 50% and 100% financial or obligations of production and exploration costs. So that's how the percentage were derived share. And truthfully, 10% is reasonable when we look at this sector. And we believe that the state must be deliberate in order to make legislation that can lead to transformation. So we note your comment, Chair, on the CS report, and that a draft was circulated, and we will go into the archives and get the information and submit. And also that the process that was followed is that for CS, we first have to go to the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation. They are the ones who give us a template, and before we move to the clusters, the DPME must give us a sign off or approve our report, and we can move from the next stage to the next up until cabinet. So that's the process that we usually follow. And also there is consultation that we do in the event that there's need for consultation. That CS or the DPME will indicate the steps that we need to take. So it's a rigorous process that we follow under DPME. And if there's a need for further publication, and if there's a need for any other matter to be addressed in CS, the DPME will indicate as such. Maybe let me allow my colleague also to come in terms of the process of legislation.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So in answering the question and on the process, what process have we followed in developing this legislation? We have followed a very extensive process, which where we have, I think, indicated that we started with the research with countries that are advanced in terms of the development of the oil and gas, such as Norway, Nigeria. And based on that research, then we went on and did our CS, the initial, because in terms of the CS, there are two processes that you have to follow. The initial one is in relations to when you are starting to develop a new bill. And then the second one is when you are amending. So we did the initial CS, which in which we have attached our research and the basis for the development of these legislations. And once after that, then we started with the process of drafting the legislations. And it was not only the department, there was a drafting team composing of the department and other stakeholders such as PASA, which is our regulator. And following that, we followed the process of clusters consultations, whereby we were seeking approval from cluster in terms of publication of the bill in order for us to receive written comments. Then the bill was published for a period of 30 days, and following that consultation, one-on-one consultation were done with relevant stakeholders, and comments were also consolidated internally. And we said again, after receiving comments, and some of the comments were incorporated into the bill. and the bill was amended accordingly. Then following that, then we followed another process again, which is also submitting the bill back to cluster for onwards transmission to Parliament. So we went to cluster, and then it was then approved. It was tabled actually in the National Assembly. We published again also in the Gazette before, and then we also tabled it in both the National Assembly and the NCOP. So in essence, this is the whole process that we have followed, and we know that once it is submitted in the National Assembly, they will have to follow their own process in which they also gazetted, and then they have also done their stakeholder consultation, received written comments, and deliberations and adoptions were also done on the bill. So in essence, this is the process that we have followed. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Members, any further questions? Okay, I think just from my side, if there is a final copy of that CS report, it would be very helpful if you can send it to us, just because it will just reassure us in terms of the steps that you've now explained going forward. And it will help us with our final mandate as well. All right. So we can now move on to the next portion of our program for today. Having concluded questions, the committee can move on with the discussion on the negotiating mandate. So the department.
Thank you so much, Chair. We can leave now.
Yes, you're welcome to stay. But you can leave.
No, thank you, Chair. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity.
No problem. Olga,
My
sorry,
apologies,
before you
Chair.
leave.
Chair, before the department leaves.
Yes, I'm about to recognize you. Member Seleko, did you have a question for the department?
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, yeah. Thank you very much for that extensive response in terms of consultation and public participation. But Chair, when you follow and when you listen to the response from the department, you would feel that enough has been done, especially in terms of consultation. But when you read some of the comments, you'll find, especially being a rural person myself, that you'll find in most people in the rural areas will always complain about, no, we are not given enough time, and this bill has been rushed. And one would always have this question, if one has to ask the department, especially looking at rural, areas within the Western Cape, where would find that most of the people that were actually attending some of these hearings were not following what the bill is actually trying to achieve. And kind of input and the kind of questions, were not actually related to the bill, and you don't only find it in this particular bill, you find it more and more when it comes to public participation. So my question to the department, what is it that they think they should have done differently to make sure that, the issue of always, crying from, residents that there is no proper or enough time, for commenting on these particular bills, so that you can get the, the real feelings and the real views of individuals within rural municipality, taking into consideration their challenges they are confronted with, and making sure also one of the issues, Chair, is the issue of language. In most instances, when you do this presentation, as much one as translators, during these public hearings, you'd find the documentation is in English and the presentation is in English, and you find the vast majority of participants or people attending these public hearings are not, their first language would Afrikaans, would be isiXhosa, would be isiZulu, and by virtue of that, you already start on a negative. One would only want to know, what is it that the department should have think that they should have done differently to get more input and participation from the residents, especially in rural areas. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Just to the department, if you don't mind responding before we love and leave you.
Thank you, honourable member, for the comment. We note the concern, and it's a valid concern on how we do a maximum reach, which we believe it can be 100% to the rural areas, to people who are in the rural areas. And Chair, we must note that this most of the time when we bring bills in the areas, you will find that there are other issues that communities are crying about. And because you are coming as a government department, you are opening yourself to people who will say, but we don't have this, we don't have water, we don't have, and at some point, once you are coming to present certain things, there is an issue around community looking for certain things in terms of service delivery. And most of the time, that's the issue when we do our consultation. But we do try to ensure that from a department's point of view, when we go do our own consultation, we try and get, obviously we don't have everybody speaking each and every language. We try and get people to do presentation in our own language. But with the consultation that is done by the PPC and the parliamentary process, we have advised them, and in most of the regions, they do get translators and they do get people speaking the language. But we see this as an area of improvement. We are not disagreeing with the concern. We are also also aware that this is happening, but I think in the next round of consultation, we will improve. We've been going around now with the NCOP, and we have observed even now that some changes need to happen in terms of the languages. And also, Chair, there is also limitations in terms of languages that we can, in South Africa, as done by Parliament, which languages we can translate the bills into, but we need the concern.
Thank you very much. I just want to check with Advocate Marstorp if he's online and if you had any comments or questions. Ms. Adams, do you know if Advocate wanted to come in here or when we discuss the negotiating mandate?
He's just struggling to get back online. He will probably come in at some point while we're deliberating.
No problem. All right. So with that, Ms. Maseko and to the team, thank you very, very much for joining us today. Thank you for all your hard work. We know that you've been under a tremendous amount of strain, having to travel all around the country and having to provide deliberations, not just to us, but to all of the other provinces. So we really, really do appreciate all of your hard work. For fielding the questions that we had, for responding to people across the country, and for being there alongside us. We wish you all the best on your work going forward and with the rest of the bill. It's been a real pleasure to work with you, and we hope you have a great day and a great rest of the weekend. Thank you. Okay, so we've excused the officials with that. Members, we're now going to move on to the deliberations. So I would just like to put it to you to get a sense of how you would like to move forward. There are two options. Essentially, we do have a draft final mandate for consideration, and or we can pull up the deliberations, so the comments from the matrices, and then speak to any concerns on that. So if I can just get your indication on which way you would like to proceed. Members? Member Seleko?
Chair, you're more than welcome to flight it, and so that we if members has an issue that they want to speak to, then they are able to do that.
All right. Apologies, I've misspoken. So let's pull up the matrices and go through that, because from there we'll be able to ascertain what we would like to include within our final mandate. Before we do, while we do that, Ms. Adams, if you can pull that up. Member van der Westhuizen.
Chair, I was wondering whether we shouldn't just look at your ideas in terms of proposed final mandate mandate and the negotiating mandate, and then just work from there, because it's been deliberated from all sides. And perhaps we can then just indicate whether we.
Okay. I hear you. Apologies, your sound is breaking up. If I can suggest, Member van der West says, and I think I caught the gist of what you're saying, but you are breaking up a bit.
Apologies, I hope I'm better now.
A bit better?
No, I was wondering if we shouldn't pull up, at least a proposed mandate, and then we're free to comment on that one.
Okay. So members, let's do it like this. Let's pull up the comments, if you don't mind. And then from there, we can just draw out aspects and finalize that. Just in terms of procedure, while I may have some ideas about what should be included in a final mandate, procedurally, we do need to actually go through the matrices. I erred in saying that we should jump to the final mandate that has been considered or thought about. So let's just quickly look at the matrices and then from there pull out anything that we think is pertinent or important to add into a negotiating mandate, if you'll indulge me. With that, Ms. Adams, if you could just pull up the document that I'd sent you that includes responses to the various clauses and the department.
Apologies, Chair. Do you want the one with the department's responses or the ones with both your views and the department's responses?
My views and the department, please.
Okay, Chair. I just need a minute. I'm going to send it to Lizette. She's going to fly. Hi, Chair. I can see it flighted. Can you?
Yes, perfect. Okay, so what we'll do, members, is I just want to scroll through it. We don't have to go through each clause, but I just want to stop on some areas that I think are pertinent. Then if you have any comments on areas that you think or feel should be drawn into a negotiating mandate, if you could indicate that. So I think with this page, firstly, this relates to both under Ames's oral submission and the comment in response here that I think is important to highlight is that the SAES that we have received is only a draft report from December 2019, which of course raises a lot of questions about the real understanding of the socioeconomic context and impact of this bill, as well as whether the correct legislative processes were followed. So of course, we need to know that a correct SAES was conducted. And then if we can scroll down just a little bit more. So there's also mention here with regards to the 10% petroleum rights. When we move down to the Western Cape government submission, there is a lot more detail on how to approach and possibly reword this section, because as it stands, there have been so many comments about who does it include, who does it not include, whether this is going to be beneficial for encouraging investors, or is it going to disincentivize investors from coming to our shores. So the current proposal is to actually remove section 31 or clause 31. Scroll down, please. Okay. I think here, for example, there's a general comment that the bill must include linkages to climate change as it relates to the petroleum industry. So the final bill must include explicit provisions for how the petroleum industry will contribute to South Africa's climate change mitigation and adaptation goals, as well as linking it to the IEP. Then scroll down. Clauses 54 and 14, I think, while it is a commitment to developing regulations, and while this commitment to developing regulations is noted, regulations are going to be quite pivotal when it comes to this bill in particular. We do actually need more clarity from this bill in terms of the immediate implications and management of appraisal outputs. So what we're talking about is having regulations that could possibly be drafted concurrently with the bill to provide the much needed clarity and assurance on how the management and commercial use of resources produced. Sorry, I'm fumbling over my words. Just to provide the necessary clarity and assurances with regards to resources produced during appraisal. Then there's a general comment with regards to NEMA. So of course, again, it's important to just ensure that there's legislative coherence, that the bill is drafted alongside NEMA and not in conflict with it. Scroll down, please. Then here there are some reflections on definitions. I think the definitions, the suggestions on definitions should be taken and added to the negotiating mandate as well. Then scroll down. So that's clause 1. We just need to make mention of that for the definitions to be altered. Okay. All right, members can also just shout if there's anything you feel you want to stop on or contribute on. Okay, again, NEMA, there must be a alignment with NEMA. Member Seleko?
No, Chair, I must reiterate my position in terms of public participation. You know, I think that must be flagged, and that was my first point, Chair. And also, Chair, I think what is making me very, very uncomfortable was the comment about the state participation, especially on the 20%. And, you know, the presenter said, you know, we want to see whether, you know, it is going to chase away investors. So when you say such things, so which means that, you know, you're saying like, we're not sure whether is it going to be of benefit to us or is it going to be a disadvantage, but nonetheless, we're just going to do it. Do you understand? And looking at our climate now, economically as a country, does one really you know, want to take such a risk and say, okay, we're going to do it and see where it takes us, you know? And I feel, Chair, they really need to look at that, because I did not get an answer, you know, how did they come to the 20% of state involvement, and whether, you know, there was a study done, you know, in terms of the implication, you know, of such a 20% of state involvement. That we really need to flag that one, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with you, particularly in terms of public participation. So when we talk about the SAES, for example, that needs to definitely come out as a procedural concern in our negotiating mandate. And then if we can just go to the Western Cape government's responses for clause 31 and 34. Okay, so here is where we're dealing with petroleum rights, and this is where essentially the 10% participation by Black persons is outlined, and the 20% state participation is outlined. Now, the Western Cape government has provided quite a, I'd say, substantive approach to how this particular section should be reworded or amended. So as you can see here, they say the Western Cape government supports measures to increase the participation of Black persons as defined in the bill in exploration and petroleum rights. However, the bill requires further clarity. So clause 3.31.1 provides that every petroleum right must have a minimum of 10% undivided participation by Black persons. The concern is that capex associated with exploration are very high, and it will be difficult for a BEE partner with financial capability to find such a project. Clause 31.4 provides that the holder or an applicant for a petroleum right must lodge a request for an extension to comply with the period to be determined by the petroleum right. 31.6 provides that the Petroleum Agency may grant an extension for a period not exceeding 2 years. So their proposal is essentially to provide for the necessary flexibility when required, and that the clause should be amended to provide that the time period for compliance be determined by agreement between the applicant and the Petroleum Agency. So if we're just looking at this 10% first, and 31 and 34 quite closely connected. So the 10% and the 20%, they're quite closely connected. So I think we should deal with these together. My suggestion on dealing with clause 31 is that we could essentially propose that this be removed, this clause be removed from the bill. Or we can say it be removed subject to any amendments being made. If I could just get your feel on that before we proceed with clause 34, Member Seleko.
Sorry, Chair, can you just repeat that again?
Okay, so when it comes to clause 31, which deals with the requirement of 10% participation by Black persons, the proposal from the Western Cape government is that to provide for the necessary flexibility when required, this clause be amended to provide for the time period for compliance by agreement between the applicant and the Petroleum Agency. Now, when we were doing the public hearings and the public participation, this was a very problematic clause. Firstly, because of how do you define Black? Secondly, because is the number 10 actually suitable? Thirdly, because of the process of how do you, as a Black person in the rural community, in the fishing village, as a woman, as a disabled person, actually access these partners like Total in order to benefit from their capex capabilities and to benefit from the 10%. So given the complexity in that, the suggestion is to remove this clause, clause 31, subject to, or sorry, let me put this differently. Remove clause 31, and then should it be added, they must follow or they must adopt the Western Cape government suggestion. I hope that makes sense, but let me first recognize Member van der Westhuizen.
Thank you, Chair. I suggest that we remove this. And the reason for that is that quite often these are not individuals investing in these long-term and high-risk ventures. Quite often it's financial instruments such as pension funds and so on, and companies that invest. And therefore, I believe it would be very difficult for these ventures to ensure that they always can I call it conform to these requirements. So and as we know, the pension funds in itself haven't got a color, but they've got members, and that membership is quite often quite diverse and representative. So my suggestion would be that we remove this. Thank you.
Yeah, I would support that. Also because if you're looking at a pension fund, you're looking at a company, you would have to have a certain level of BEE compliance or Broad-Based Black Empowerment Act compliance. Member Seleko, if I can just check with you if you're happy with that.
No, Chair, I'm happy with that. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then Member Seleko, we're moving on to the clause that you just mentioned, clause 34. So this deals with the state's 20% participation and as a minimum to ensure meaningful participation. Members, I would submit the same, that this clause be amended. This clause be removed, given that it is quite contentious and problematic. And it does open itself up to possible maladministration, etc. Members, if I could get an indication of whether you support that, or if you have any additional thoughts. Okay, Member van der Westhuizen supports.
Yes, Chair, I would propose that. I'll add 8.
Thank you. Okay, let me just have a look at my notes to see if there are any other areas that are of concern, particularly in the matrix. Okay, so we've spoken about the integration of CS. We've spoken about public participation. I think we've also touched on the importance of mitigation climate change. Let's scroll down a bit more. Okay, clause 44, there we go. Clause 44 deals again with NEMA. Just scroll up a little bit. Scroll up a bit more, please. Sorry, Lizette, if you could just scroll up to the previous page. There we go. Okay, so clause 44 states that the minister must grant a petroleum right if the applicant has proven access to financial resources and has the technical capability to conduct the proposed exploration operation. So essentially what we need here is clarity and consistency in the financial requirements for all phases of the operation. The bill should ensure that terms for financial provisioning for rehabilitation, decommissioning, latent impacts are transparent, inclusive, and do not grant the minister excessive discretion that could lead to uncertainty or arbitrary decision-making. So members, my proposal here for clause 44 in particular is that this clause needs to be redrafted accordingly. Okay, move on to the next one. And scroll down. Sorry, can we scroll down to the next pages? Okay, can carry on. Yep, 47 deals with an alignment in terms of environmental and water use. Okay, we can scroll down again. Okay, 52, just if we can go up a little bit, this year, I think essentially this is important to pull out. The clause 52 should just be revised to unambiguously state that the environmental authorization is a prerequisite for the issuance of a drilling permit. Okay, then we can scroll down to the next page. Yeah. Yeah, we can just stop at 88. I think 88 is just an important one to mention, that suspension or cancellation of permits should be predicated on clear criteria that protect investment while ensuring compliance with NEMA's rehabilitation provisions and ensuring the cancellation does not undermine the financial security or environmental commitments. That's just an addition that needs to be made, clause 88. Then clause 92 will also require some redrafting, just to ensure that the expropriation for petroleum activities is aligned with the Constitution, balancing property rights and the public interest, as well as affirming the necessity of proportionality evaluations for property deprivation. So we just want to protect property rights for clause 92 in alignment with the Constitution. Okay, scroll down a bit more. I'm looking for a provision related to PAJA. Covered. Okay, we can just stop there, sorry, on David Prince. Okay, no, we can proceed. See, they're quite repetitive now, but many were public submissions. I see of support as well. Okay, here it's about alignment of NEMA. Okay, definitions. Definition. Okay, above. Sorry, we can just go up again. So this just related with the importance of clause 3. This related to the importance of just ensuring alignment again with sustainable development goals, as well as it dealt with the custodianship of petroleum resources. So just if we can note this as well in our negotiating mandate. Scroll down. Okay, can we stop there? Scroll up. Okay, so clause 46 clearly, so the department's response on clause 46 to the Treasure Crew Action Group was that it indicates the petroleum right may not progress to the next exploration phase without the approval. So just one request made here for 46 is that the bill should be amended to require re-evaluation of environmental risks and impacts for each new applicant or renewal, taking into account technological advances and changing operational contexts. It should mandate a specific assessment to address risks associated with high impact geological structures. These amendments would help mitigate potential environmental damage and ensure changes in operations. Ensure that changes in operation do not inadvertently escalate risks. So that's just the proposal to amend 46 that we can bring out in the negotiating mandate as well. Okay, if we can scroll down. Apologies, members, if you see there's PIA. Okay, I'm sorry. Here is a legislative alignment concern related to clause 50. So clause 50 deals with drilling, the provision of drilling, chemical analysis, So the proposal here is that the legislation, or clause 50 in particular, be amended to require detailed information on drilling, waste material volumes, and environmental measurements that be published on government-sanctioned platforms like a gazette, ensuring adherence to PIA. Okay, and this would obviously assist with accountability and public engagement. So we can include this in the negotiating mandate under a provision that deals with alignment with legislation. Okay, if we can scroll down a bit more. Again, members, if you see anything that you'd just like to touch on or stop on, please say so. Okay, sorry, can we just scroll up slightly? Okay, clause 84. There is a recommendment here to ensure long-term protection of water resources. It is essential to establish a specialized workforce with IMPASA for continuous monitoring of well casting and groundwater conditions. This should have the authority to enforce accountability and remediation measures when environmental baselines are threatened. Members, I just wanted to ask you on this. So this is just a suggestion around ensuring that the bill does promote environmental sustainability and aligns with NEMA. Do you think that this suggestion put forward on a sort of task team on monitoring, do you think that this should maybe be requested as a regulation, or is it something that should be incorporated into the bill?
Chair, I would propose that it be part of the regulations.
Okay, so perhaps then for clause 84, just to add that a regulation should be drafted to this effect, or to bring this to life. Okay, and we can scroll down a little bit. There's another mention on PIA and alignment, NEMA. Okay, can we stop there? Section 99, which deals with the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act. So essentially just a proposal here, and this is also something that we can bring under legislative alignment or alignment with other instruments, is that the application of PAJA should be unequivocal in the bill, ensuring that all relevant sections are applied to court proceedings, avoiding any legal ambiguity, and ensuring that administrative actions are fair, reasonable, and procedurally sound. Okay. Then I think we can move down. Carry on. If we can just scroll up slightly. So this is just under definitions. I think can add this to a section of definitions on the negotiating mandate. Clause 21, to revise the committee established by section 21 to exclude environmental, preventing any overlap with existing NEMA frameworks, and clarify its distinct function. So that's just one recommendation there in terms of definitions for clause 21. Then we can scroll down. I'm trying to be as thorough as possible, members, so we don't miss anything in our negotiating mandate. Okay. All right, and then just stopping at 91. So a suggestion here, the language should be revised to obligate the holder of the petroleum rights to provide fair and timely compensation to landowners and occupiers affected by extraction activities. This is again just a way to ensure that we protect property rights in line with constitutional rights. So maybe under legislative proposals for the negotiating mandate, we can have a section that also deals with constitutional rights and constitutionality. I still don't see Advocate Marsdorf on, but it would be good just to pick his brain on that as well. And then for the administrative penalty section, the bill should be amended just to set penalties based on a percentage of the annual turnover of the oil and gas operations to ensure that they act as a true deterrent. So funds can then also be collected as penalties, but must be explicitly earmarked for environmental restoration and support community development projects impacted by the industry's activities. So I think that that's just an important one in terms of dealing with penalties and also in terms of dealing with 91. All right. Then there's also a question of state liability. So it's important for the bill to stipulate that state-owned entities are equally subject to full force of the law. Okay, so that deals with 91. We can scroll down. Oh, that's it. Okay, members. So we've now gone through the comments on the deliberations or the matrix. Those were my proposed comments. I just want to check in with you if you have any proposed comments, particularly that you think should be brought into a negotiating mandate. Members?
I'm happy, Chair. I've given my comments in terms of what I would want to for them to consider. Chair.
Okay. So then just to recap then, so we have indicated the various sections that we would like to add, particularly related to definitions, constitutionality, various clauses that may require some amendment, as well as sections 31 and 34 in particular that we would like to be removed. But also recap, we wanted to, in terms of procedural concerns, talk about the CS report. We wanted to reflect on public participation, as we didn't really have enough time to delve into it as deeply as we would have liked to, which may have not done a justice or a service to our consideration of this bill. We reflected as well on climate change mitigation, on state participation, on provisions related to Black economic empowerment, environmental legislation such as NEMA, labour standards to an extent, mining regulation consistency, as well as constitutional compliance. So members, I would just like to, from this point, afford Ms. Adams the opportunity to draft the negotiating mandate. Ms. Adams, if you could just indicate how much time would you need so that we can reconvene then?
Hi, Chair. If it's possible, can I get until 11:15, please?
No problem. Okay, members, with that, thank you for your consideration. We'll reconvene at 11:15. Thank you. So I trust that the procedural staff have had enough time to work on compiling a report on the negotiating mandate. If I could please get an indication.
Apologies, Chair, I couldn't hear you.
I just wanted to confirm you've had enough time to work on the report. We can flight it now.
Yes, Chair, Lizette's going to flight.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, perfect. Thank you. So members, I think we're still waiting on Advocate Marsdorp. Oh no, perfect. Mr. Advocate Marsdorp is there. So what I'm going to do, and if Ms. Adams could just indicate if this is procedurally in order, I'll read through each provision or each little section of the report, and then we can just reflect on whether we're happy with how it's captured or if any amendments should be made. Ms. Adams, would this be procedurally in order?
Yes, Chair, in order.
Okay, so we'll start. Draft committee report, negotiating mandate stage, report of the Standing Committee on Finance, Economic Opportunities and Tourism on the Upstream Petroleum Resources Development Bill, B13B of 2021, NCOP, S76. Okay, member fund investigation, I see you. Okay, there we go. S76 referred to it in terms of Standing Rule 217, confers the Western Cape's delegation in the NCOP the authority to not support the bill and recommends the bill be redrafted in its entirety. Members, are we happy with this?
Agreed.
Okay, if we can scroll down. And Advocate Marsdorp, if there are any sections as well from your side that you'd like to jump in on and add to, please do so. If we can scroll down. All right, procedural concerns, socioeconomic impact assessment system integration. The procedural concern remains that the CS report provided to the committee is a draft report from December 2019, which may not reflect the latest socioeconomic context and that it may point to improper legislative processes being followed. The Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, the DMRE, needs to ensure that the final CS is updated, publicly available, and reflects an in-depth analysis of the bill's impact, which was completed in the necessary period. This should include an assessment of how the bill promotes the interests of various groups of Black persons and provides evidence for the clause's alignment with the bill's objectives as stated in Clause 2D. The DMRE must ensure that the CS report informs the legislative process with updated socioeconomic impact data adhering to best practices for transparency and accountability. Any procedural shortcomings must be addressed to reflect compliance with assessment procedures. Members, are we happy with this addition to procedural concerns?
Happy?
Okay, if we can scroll down, see another thumbs up, great. Public participation enhancement. The public commenting process should be strengthened, particularly for underrepresented communities to ensure diversity of voices contributes to the policy-making process. This should encompass workshops and hearings beyond formal comment periods. During public participation process, the committee received complaints that some communities were consulted, but the National Department did not follow up with them regarding their concerns about the bill. The turnaround time for processing the bill was very short, given the importance of its content, which put the entire value chain under pressure to process the bill adequately. The committee also observed the lack of representation in respect of different major languages in the provinces. Members of the public expressed dissatisfaction with the bill, and presentation on the bill were presented in English when the majority of the affected communities were Afrikaans and isiXhosa. As a result, many of the members of the public struggled to understand the bill. Members, are we happy with this?
Happy?
Okay, we can scroll down.
Chairperson, maybe just an observation from my side.
Yes, please.
Where I'm involved in quite a number of bills, especially of late in the past 4 months. And those 3 bullet points can be copied and pasted, cut and pasted in respect of every bill we've had thus far. So it seems this refrain, this constant repetition of procedural inadequacy, public participation shortcomings, seems to pervade the legislative and lawmaking process every time. So in as much as this is our negotiating mandate, and that those 3 bullets are very generic on the face of it, it would be useful for us to just reserve, if this goes any further, to just reserve instances where the concern raised is corroborated. If we say the turnaround time for the processing, this is bullet 2, the turnaround time for the processing of this bill was very short. We should have in the back of our archives, if you like, why we say that, what was the time that the bill was sent through, the available select committee timelines, what we did, how many hearings, etc., etc. So I'm just alerting the committee that if this becomes critical down the line, if there should be a review process subsequent to promulgation, that we should have the backup to corroborate those statements. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to pull in Ms. Adams. Ms. Adams, do you feel that we can maybe strengthen this line?
We could, Chairperson, although I've taken note of what Advocate Masab has indicated, and we can have those timelines ready if we ever get questioned about it. It's up to the committee if you want to add anything or not.
Chairperson, if I can just jump in there. Obviously, this is a negotiated mandate, so it's not the terrain, if you like, to insert delicacies like timelines, etc. But just to alert my colleague, because it's happened before, where we needed to quickly find information for the High Court and for affidavits, etc., to corroborate our vermins. If we are called upon to explain bullet 2 and 3, especially as far as language is concerned, even the one observation, Chairperson, that was made by one stakeholder, that a member of the public wanted to understand how this bill will help them to understand the fluctuations of petrol prices. A complete and substantive lack of appreciation for what this bill seeks to do. And I can say that about every bill when it comes to the public. How they are either uninformed or they are not prepared to speak to the substance of the bill. It even happened with the Powers Bill. People had all manner of input other than the specific clauses of the bill. We find that all over. So I'm just alerting my colleagues in procedure that we should have the corroborating information to back up our bullets in this mandate. It's not the place to put it in, but just to have it down the line. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Adams has just privately contacted me as well, just indicating that, you know, if we compare this to the NCA bill and public procurement bill, there was relatively more time, but I think the pressure that came with this bill in particular was that we received this along with a bottleneck of other bills that we had to process. And I think that's really where the crunch comes in. But yes, this is a negotiating mandate, so it's not the place to deal with the intricacies and delicacies of this argument. So let us just move on to the next section then. If we can scroll down, please. Ms. Klutter, if we can just scroll down, please. Thank you. Okay, on to substantive concerns. We're now on to definitions in the bill and regulations. If we can scroll down a little bit more, so you can see more of the definitions. Okay, Well, sorry, I just want to read the top. Okay, perfect. So we'll just start with I'll read out the definitions and then we can just reflect on them. So we can just scroll to the top of the definitions again and then scroll down as we read. Okay, clause 1, it is not clear whether the definition of development is inclusive of upstream petroleum infrastructure. The relationship between these two terms should be clarified in the bill. While the department's response to the committee indicated that the term development inherently includes upstream petroleum infrastructure, clarity is needed to eliminate ambiguity. It is proposed that the bill explicitly defines upstream petroleum infrastructure within the context of development to ensure comprehensive understanding and avoid potential misinterpretations that could impact regulatory and compliance matters. This will ensure all stakeholders have a uniform understanding of the terms as they relate to operational and environmental obligations. Clause 21, the name of the committee established by Section 21 should be revised to exclude environmental to prevent overlap with the existing NEMA frameworks and clarify its distinct functions. Clause 54 and 14, the definition of appraisal and the relevant provision, Clause 54, does not clarify whether or how the petroleum resources produced in the process leading to and during the appraisal process should be managed and disposed of, whether it can be used for commercial gain. Also, clarity must be provided on the management and disposal of petroleum that is extracted during the exploration phase of applications, especially considering the rights related to the exploration phase can be as long as 9 years. See clause 14.2. It is recommended that the regulations be drafted and implemented with the bill to ensure that inappropriate use and its associated impacts are managed during exploration and appraisal operations. Page 3 of 18, I think we just need to capitalize P there. Page 3 of 18, natural gas emissions will be significant, if not effectively. Sorry, this line doesn't make sense here. I think we can remove that sentence from page 13 to appraisal operations. While the commitment to developing regulations is noted, clarity on the immediate implications and management of appraisal outputs is needed. Regulations can be drafted concurrently with the bill to provide clarity and assurance on the management and commercial use of resources during appraisal. And then finally, clause 84 of definitions. To ensure the long-term protection of water resources, it is essential to establish a specialized workforce within PASA for the continuous monitoring of well casings and groundwater conditions. The team should have the authority to enforce accountability and remediation measures when environmental baselines are threatened, as well as to adjust operational practices to prevent long-term environmental degradation. This provision should be added to the regulations of the bill. So just if we can delete that one line. In the meantime, are there any thoughts with regards to definitions? Everyone happy? Okay. All right, so we'll delete that one line just to make it read better. Then we'll move on to climate change mitigation. The department should address the global urgency of climate change by embedding carbon reduction targets within the bill and strategies for a sustainable energy transition. The bill should emphasize South Africa's commitment to its international obligations, such as the Paris Agreement, and recognize the necessity for a long-term sustainable energy policy. A revision of the bill is necessary to integrate climate considerations, ensuring alignment with international energy transition goals and safeguarding of local economic development within a sustainable and environmentally conscious framework. Clause 3, to ensure the bill aligns with South Africa's climate change commitments and the constitutional mandate for environmental stewardship, Clause 3 should be amended to explicitly state the state's responsibility in the sustainable development and custodianship of petroleum resources. This should include specific provisions for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and the assessment of the impact of carbon tax implementation. The amended clause should articulate that environmental considerations, including impact assessments, are integral to granting of any exploration or production rights and must be in compliance with both national commitments and international environmental agreements. Any thoughts on the environmental section, members? See another thumbs up. Okay. State participation scrutiny. The department should critically evaluate the proposed state petroleum company framework, advocate for mechanisms that ensure its operations enhance transparency and deter corruption, drawing lessons from challenges faced by other state-owned entities. The current clause 34.2 indicates that the state has a right to a 20% carried interest in petroleum rights, including in both the exploration and production phase. This requirement may be of concern for investors. The committee recommends this clause of the bill be removed. Members happy with state participation? Yep. I see a thumbs up. I see
Happy.
two. Great. Black economic empowerment policy appraisal. Black economic empowerment provisions should be reassessed to prevent deterring investment while promoting broad-based economic empowerment and transformation, while ensuring that the country's mineral wealth directly benefits South Africa is an important policy objective. These provisions could deter investors with stipulations that every company applying for mining rights must be owned by a BEE partner. As such, it is recommended that clause 31.1, or I think we should just say clause 31 rather than 31.1, is removed from the bill. Also, sorry, if we go up, I just want to confirm it's clause 34. Let's say for clause for this section, the previous section, let's not state the subsection. Let's just say the clause in its entirety. So 31 and 34, not 31. Okay. Members happy with that?
Happy.
All right. Environmental legislation compliance. The department must ensure compliance with the National Environmental Management Act, NEMA, and its regulations, particularly regarding environmental impact assessments, EIAs, and environmental management plans. The bill should align with NEMA's requirement for conducting EIAs and mitigating environmental impacts. Clause 44. There is a need for clarity and consistency in financial requirements across all phases of operation. The bill should ensure that the terms for financial provisioning for rehabilitation, decommissioning, and latent impacts are transparent, inclusive, and do not grant the minister excessive discretion that could lead to uncertainty or arbitrary decision-making. We propose that the provisions align closely with best practices and standards outlined in NEMA to ensure environmental and financial accountability without compromising investment attractiveness and operational efficiency. Just want to scroll down and see if there's anything else there. Okay. Member van der Westhuizen?
My capacity standing committee on environmental affairs, I fully endorse this comment from the Western Cape.
Thank you. Clause 52. It's not clear if the application for drilling permit will be issued once an environmental authorization or an amended environmental authorization has been issued. The wording of clause 52.3 seems to suggest a drilling permit must be issued within 60 days from the date of receipt of the application, regardless of whether the environmental impact assessment process was finalized. The clause should be revised to unambiguously state that environmental authorization is a prerequisite for the issuance of a drilling permit. Scroll down, please. Okay, see happiness. All right. Clause 88, suspension or cancellation of permit should be predicated on clear criteria that protect the investment while ensuring compliance with NEMA's rehabilitation provisions, ensuring that the cancellation does not undermine financial security and environmental. I wonder if clause 88 is maybe a duplication here of what we said previously. If we can just scroll up a bit. Okay, never mind. We can leave it as is. Okay. 46, the bill should be amended to necessitate the reevaluation of environmental risks and impacts for each new application or renewal, taking into account technological advances and changing operational contexts. It should mandate a specific assessment to address risks associated with high-impact geological structures. The amendments would help mitigate potential environmental damage and ensure that changes in operation do not inadvertently escalate risks. And then finally, for this section, clause 50, the The legislation should be amended to require that detailed information on drilling, additives, waste material volumes, and environmental measurements be published on a government-sanctioned public platform or gazette, ensuring adherence to the PIA Act for accountability and public engagement. Members, are we happy with those recommendations in the negotiating mandate on the environment? Member van der Westhuizen?
Happy, thank you, Chair. If I could just suggest that we perhaps reorder the paragraphs to follow the numbering of the clauses in our submission. Thank you.
Yes, I agree with that. Just if Ms. Adams for your noting and Ms. Klute for your noting as well. All right, then labour standards adherence. The department must ensure adherence to the Labour Relations Act and Basic Conditions of Employment Act. The bill should include provisions that uphold labour rights, fair employment practices, and safe working conditions for workers in the petroleum sector. Members, are we happy? Shall we move on to mining regs? Okay. The department must ensure consistency with Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act in terms of licensing rights allocations, and regulatory oversight. The bill should align with the MPRDA provisions related to exploration, production, and the exploitation of petroleum resources. Are we in accordance? Then, thank you. So I'm going to read this section out and then I'm going to call on Advocate Marstorp just to check in and see if he has any different thoughts. So in terms of constitutional compliance and alignment to legislation, the department must ensure alignment with the South African Constitution. I think we must just amend the name there for Constitution, so it's more legalistic. Particularly regarding fundamental rights and principles such as environmental protection, socioeconomic rights, the promotion of equitable access to resources. The bill should not infringe upon constitutional rights and promote the realization of constitutional objectives. Clause 92, there should perhaps be a comma, after constitutional rights. Otherwise, it might read to say that the bill should not infringe on the realization. Actually, no, let's leave it as is. Clause 92, a redrafting of this clause is required to ensure expropriation for petroleum activities is aligned with the Constitution, balancing property rights with public interest and affirming the necessity of proportionality evaluations for any property deprivation. Okay. And scroll down. Yes, this would also need to be renumbered chronologically, please. Clause 91, the language should be revised to obligate the holder of petroleum rights to provide fair and timely compensation to landowners and occupiers affected by extraction activities. This amendment will align with the bill, with constitutional rights and expropriation laws, ensuring those impacted by oil and gas operations are justly compensated. For the administrative penalties section, the bill should be amended to set penalties, it's a bit small, to set penalties based on percentage of the annual turnover of oil and gas operations to ensure that they act as true deterrents. Funds collected as penalties must be explicitly earmarked for environmental restoration and support community development projects impacted by the industry's activities. Regarding state liability, the bill must stipulate that state-owned entities are equally subject to the full force of the law for environmental infractions. This accountability ensures no legal exemptions for state entities, maintaining equitable enforcement across all operations within the industry. You can scroll down. Finally, clause 99.4, the application of the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act 2000, Act 3 of 2000, should be unequivocal in the bill, ensuring that all relevant sections are applied to court proceedings, thus avoiding any legal ambiguity and ensuring that administrative actions are fair, reasonable, and procedurally sound. Okay, with that, massive mouthful. If I can just hand over to Advocate Marstorp to see if he feels that there's anything that we've missed or misunderstood in terms of constitutionality of the bill.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, I agree with the observations as it is reflected there. Maybe just the following, Chairperson. The reference to legislative alignment is quite critical, because you see, when we draft one particular law or bill, then one would assume that that law or bill presupposes a policy and strategic imperative, and it operates from that premise. One can't have something said in one law, which is already promulgated, and then something else in another bill, which may have, there is a resultant uncertainty, and the public or stakeholders or interested parties won't know which law to follow or what the intention of the legislature is. So as it stands there, the reference to alignment is critical. And I mention that for the following reason as well. I've had, fortunately, sight of the submissions made by various stakeholders and NGOs who have an interest in this bill and who took time and effort to submit their observations. And in some instances, there are NGOs, in particular Green Connection, as well as Trans-Karoo Action Group, who have raised the following point, namely that there was reference made, or there is reference made in one of the National Environmental Management Act provisions to a framework, which is the one environment system, I should say. And in as much as it is a framework, it is very much part of the legislative landscape and should be considered when laws are made. In fact, there was a court case where TKAG, the action group, was a party to, and the Supreme Court of Appeal at the time said that the implementation of this framework would establish NEMA as the only environmental statute and the environment minister as the lead minister or the vanguard entity when it comes to matters pertaining to the environment. Now, I'm mentioning that so that there is appreciation for the need for alignment. What we now have is this bill, petroleum resource development, seeking to legislate on matters outside of its authority or outside of its lane, as it were. The need for alignment is critical, because clearly there isn't alignment here. As I said, there are at least two entities that endorses this observation. But further, Chairperson, I don't know who does a follow-through in respect of our, as a country, our responsibilities in respect of international agreements and being signatory to those instruments. Let me read section 231, subsection 4 of the Constitution. And I read now, it says, subsection 4 says, any international agreement, and we are party to many climate-related agreements, any international agreement becomes law in the Republic when it is enacted into law by national legislation. Now, if we say that, I don't know who at national level or anywhere tracks resultant responsibilities and duties we undertake to implement, who ensures that those commitments are taken up in legislation. So again, whether this legislation is aligned to section 231 is questionable. I heard earlier that during the presentation by the official from National, and when it came to the issue of alignment and the issue of our commitments pertaining to international undertakings, and she said the official, not the signatory, the political signatory at international level, the official says, in as much as, and this is paraphrasing, in as much as we are signing all these agreements and are committing to various objectives and targets, etc., we are an emerging economy and our economies differ, and therefore our resources and the way we will implement, or the extent to which we can use our resources, will differ and will be at variance to international standards, expectations, and targets. Non-alignment. So I'm endorsing this observation. It's unfortunate that this is now the negotiating mandate, because one would have liked to, and I'm sure that our colleagues at NCOP will submit in extensive fashion the thinking behind this critical need for alignment. Because on the one hand, we pride ourselves to be part of a nation of nations and to be up there with the nations of nations and seeking to do everything in our constitutional and moral commitment as far as the environment is concerned. But then we legislate in another direction. We try and promote the extraction of hydrocarbon substances, as opposed to promoting equally, with equal vigor, other resources and targets when it comes to renewable energy, etc. So the first line there, Chairperson, says, the department must ensure alignment with the South African Constitution. That's about 8 words there. But the profound extent of it, as far as 231 is concerned, for example, doesn't necessarily come through there. But then again, this is negotiating mandate. It's not supposed to be a full-on submission. So I agree with that first statement. It's just that it doesn't capture the profound imperative that's vested on us as a country to align with international commitments. We signed these things. We didn't not sign it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I think that definitely gives us a much deeper appreciation and more nuanced understanding of constitutional alignment or misalignment that we're dealing with. Okay, members, any other thoughts on constitutional? Okay, seeing none, so we'll just continue with additional recommendations. Public participation framework. There must be a call for a robust framework for comprehensive stakeholder engagement that underscores transparency, inclusive dialogue, and potential impact assessment. And environmental impact assessment. SCOE and BEE framework reconsideration. There must be a reassessment of the frameworks governing the state participation in BEE to ensure they promote a conducive investment environment while advancing equitable participation. Environmental compliance enhancement. The committee proposes the inclusion of rigorous environmental compliance standards and safety regulations reflective of both national interests and international benchmarks within the bill. Skills and infrastructure investment. The department must highlight the importance of investment in industry-relevant infrastructure and skills development as pivotal to the sustainability and growth of the petroleum sector. Market dynamics and economic sustainability. There must be a thorough analysis of the bill's implications on job creation, economic growth, and South Africa's competitiveness in the global energy market. Members, are we happy with those additional recommendations? Are there any others that I might have missed or that we might have missed? Okay, happiness. So now on to the conclusion. Thank you. The committee's negotiating mandate drew upon extensive stakeholder feedback, including inputs from the Western Cape Government, Life After Coal, Impilo, Ngaphandle, Gwamahle Coalition, and the Green Connection, Mossel Bay Socioeconomic Collective, Treasure Karoo Action Group, and considerations from the I think that should read the draft socioeconomic impact assessment. If we can just amend that as well. This mandate will articulate a comprehensive strategy reflecting the multifaceted nature of the bill. The need for a holistic approach to legislating the upstream petroleum sector is paramount to align with both domestic priorities and global energy trends. The negotiating mandate endeavored to encapsulate the wide array of feedback and construct a cohesive, informed, and forward-looking legislative direction. Given the current form of the bill, coupled with the highlighted concerns, the draft negotiating mandate suggests the Western Cape's delegation in the NCOP withhold support for the bill until substantive revisions are made. These proposed revisions should strive to embed environmental sustainability, economic viability, and equitable benefits for all South Africans. The reformed bill should consider the imminent energy transitions globally and position South Africa as a leader in sustainable energy practices. Members, if we're happy with that, I think we can now move on and we can indicate whether members would like to adopt the negotiating mandate. But also if there are any members who might have a minority view.
Just an observation from my side, Chairperson, pardon the butting in, but if you get to this stage, maybe just a small observation. It says the negotiating mandate endeavored to just 3 paragraphs up. I'm not sure why it's in the past tense.
Oh, sorry, misdraft or mistake. Yeah, we can...
It's just 3 paragraphs up.
We can just scroll up, Ms. Kluti.
Got it here. I've made the change on my side.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, members, can we adopt or any minority views? Just get an indication, please. Member van der Westhuizen.
Thank you, Chair. Since there seems to be no minority view, I propose that that be deleted and that we support the document as is and submit that to the NCOP.
Thank you very much. Member Seleko.
Chair, seconded. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So the amendments that we noted previously will be made or have been made. We have now indicated our support to adopt the negotiating mandate. So having considered and adopted the negotiating mandate, if members can just indicate if there are any recommendations, resolutions, or requests for information. Member van der Westhuizen.
Can I propose that the comments made by our advocate Marsdorp have to be captured in the minutes of today's proceedings, as we did not deem it to be appropriate for a negotiating mandate, but that the points he made are still valid and important.
I agree. I think it's a good idea. And then also just to request again the final SEAS report from the department. In their prior communication with us, they indicated that they had attached a final report, but they hadn't. The only report that we have received to date is a draft report. So again, that leaves me quite puzzled on where we're at in terms of the socioeconomic assessment. Okay, any further resolutions? I see none. With that, members, thank you so much for all of your hard work on this. We've gone all around the province. We've heard people from every corner. We've tried our best to represent and include all of their points of view. So I thank you for your hard work. I do see Member van der Westhuizen's hand. I'm not sure if that's a legacy hand.
Sorry, ma'am, it is a legacy. On the app, it seems to me it's not lowering one's hand once you've spoken as on the internet.
Okay, no problem. All right, with that, members, thank you very much. Thank you as well to all the procedural staff who've joined us today, to the sign language. We appreciate everything. Have a lovely day going forward.